This is Chick2Chick Uncut, raw and unfiltered.
So back in 2017, this book came out, and it's called The Gentle Art of Swedish Death Cleaning. After the book, it was then turned into a very popular and kind of funny show. And so the concept behind this, and this really is a real thing in Sweden, that as people get older in life, they start to clear away the clutter. They start to get rid of things in their home. And sometimes they do it on their own, and sometimes they call in professionals. And really the concept behind it is this is kind of like their final act of love before they pass away. They try to get rid of things so they don't burden their loved ones or their family members with this monumental task that once they pass away, then their loved one has to come in and get rid of all of this stuff that they have accumulated through the years. So how can we incorporate this into our own lives? How can we get rid of all of this clutter and really just kind of free your space, and so that you don't burden your loved ones with this? That brings us to our guest today, Carolina Harvey. She has a business called Cure the Clutter. Carolina, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this business of getting rid of everybody else's clutter.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, Flora. I'm excited to be here. So I started my business 17 years ago in 2008, and my goal was really to do two things: to serve my community and use my gifts. I've grown so much as a professional organizer in the industry over the last 17 years, but I think it's been really exciting to work with people from all walks of life, young, older, stay-at-home moms, business owners, people that are downsizing and moving into, a home, or downsizing so that they can move in with family because they're getting older. So I've been doing it a long time, and I just still, like the first day I started, thoroughly enjoy it.
So what made you get into this? What was inside of you that this then became a passion for you?
Yeah, I think what I saw is people really needed help. And I think the most important thing that you can do in this process is ask for help. The first thing and the most important thing to do is to ask for help, whether it's family members, whether it's a professional, whoever that is. I think asking for help is really important. I think I have this drive to help people.
Well, I think it's great because I do think a lot of people become overwhelmed and they start looking around their house and they're like, oh my God, I have so much stuff. Where do I begin? So
Absolutely.
I want to get back to the gentle art of Swedish death cleaning. I'm kind of curious, what do you think about the concept?
Yeah, I think it's a really great concept to start early. I think the goal is, to do it as you go and as you live. But I think sometimes people don't think about that. If you bring a new pair of sheets in or some new towels in, are you letting go of those items that you're replacing?
Yes,
right? Some people aren't. Yeah, Flora's doing it. But some people aren't doing it. And I think that's when it starts to get overwhelming. And then you end up even having a professional in, or, if unfortunately people pass away, they leave 40, 50 years full of a house. And that's really hard on loved ones. So I think I really like this concept of starting sooner, whether you're doing it when you're in your mid-20s or if you're in your mid-40s, or, if you know that you're downsizing. I actually have a particular client that I worked with in Mechanicsburg, and the house, if you walk in, it's pristine, it's gorgeous, but she knew she needed to downsize. She only has one child and she didn't want to leave this to him, so we went through the whole house. It took us about 7 months, from the very first floor to the basement. We took 7 months, meeting once a week for 4 hours each week. And we went through every part of her house. Every time I left that house, I have a Honda Pilot. It was full. It was full of things to donate. Smokes. It was full of things to recycle. And then we put the trash out with her trash each week. So I think it's really important to do it sooner so that you don't leave it. And I think that's what the whole goal of this book is.
So it's built on 4 principles: personal responsibility, practicality, consideration for others, And my favorite, minimalism. I am a self-proclaimed minimalist. So
Are you?
Let's break this down and take each one individually when they talk about personal responsibility of Swedish death cleaning. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was just talking about with this particular client. She wanted to take ownership and not leave. And it's her and her husband. I worked with her and her husband, actually. We finished up in the garage with her husband. He did such a great job as well. He didn't buy into it initially, but as time went on, he was like, all right, I'm in, I can do this, and he did a great job as well, but they were taking ownership of it. They knew that they didn't want to leave this for, their son, that he doesn't even live in the state. And so that makes a lot of sense to me, to take care of it before you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, it's a huge burden. Practicality. Absolutely. Let's talk about that one. What do they mean by that?
Yeah. When you think about downsizing and moving into, let's say you're moving into an assisted living, or you're moving into a family unit, like a home where it has an in-law suite and you want family to live in there, it's practical to go through your things as you're living in there, because you don't end up with 3 spatulas and 10, of the same kind of chef's knife. You know what I mean? Or 25 cups. You have a table that's set for 8 seats. Do you really need a setting for 20?
No.
So you don't. So you want to live practically too, right? Do you need your cabinets full of 25 mugs when there's 5 of you that live in that home? Yeah, people talk about making sure they have enough for guests. Do you ever have that many guests? Okay, so some people do, but most people don't. It's practical. Right.
So when you talk about consideration for others, I think that's self-explanatory, right? You're doing
totally
this, so you have consideration for others. And then let's talk about minimalism, because I am a minimalist. In my world, less is more. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I like the idea of minimalism. I kind of equate it to a hotel or a home that you go, an Airbnb that you go and stay at, right? They have minimal things. They have enough to set that table that they have in that dining room. They have just enough, items in their bathroom for the guests for that week, right? Enough soap or toothpaste or whatever. So I think about minimalism. While I love it, it's not always realistic, right? If you have kids, if you have, a lot of schoolwork, kids in school, kids in preschool, kids in middle school, high school, all those things. There's a lot of things that are coming in. My kids just finished school last week. I know it's a little early compared to some schools here in central Pennsylvania, but my youngest and he's 14, went through all his books, all his papers already.
I love you.
We threw away an entire trash bag, or we're taking paper to use it for fire. But we wanted to get rid of all those items. So yes, I think minimalism is good, but you need to make sure it can be realistic for your lifestyle. So if you don't want a lot of decor, that's okay. It's great to be minimalistic in that way. But I think, whatever matches whatever life stage you're going through is what you want to aim for.
Okay, let's get back to your business, Cure the Clutter. So let's say somebody calls you and says, Carolina, I need your help. Walk us through this process. What do you do and how do you help people cure the clutter?
Yes. Well, the first thing I do is I encourage them and tell them that I'm really proud of them for reaching out, because it's hard to ask for help. Yeah. So number one is I try to develop that relationship with them, because I know sometimes it can be really embarrassing for someone to reach out and say, I need help. Shouldn't I know how to do this? Not everybody has been taught it. Not to everyone it comes naturally. So I think I want to encourage them, develop that relationship. And then when I step into their home, they kind of already know me. We've kind of already done that over the phone. So when I go into their home, I'm asking a lot of questions. The organizers that they work with, or myself, from Cure the Clutter, we're asking a lot of questions. We really want to understand what it is they need. Do they need systems developed? Do they need to downsize? I was talking to a lady yesterday. She is moving out of state. She's trying to downsize and pack at the same time. She's doing it a really smart thing to let go of items before she even has to take it, her move is going to cost less because she's going to have less weight. And so I asked them what it is that their goals are. We ask those questions. Once we get those answers, we get we get right into it. We develop those systems for them. Or, we pack their boxes, but we pack the things that they know that they need. Where are they moving into? I had a speaking engagement like 2 weeks ago. And the gentleman was asking me, well, how do I downsize? Do I go room by room? Sure, you could go room by room. But something that I suggested based on what he's going through is, I said, what if you pack what you need and then leave the rest of the house, right? You leave the rest of the house for donation instead of going room by room, pulling what it is that you need because of the time constraint that you have, because you need to move sooner. It really depends on the situation. So we kind of cater the organizing or the help towards what they're looking for, and then we execute it with them.
Yeah. So it depends what their goal is. And
Absolutely.
That's how you then develop your strategy. You mentioned that house that it took you 7 months. Lord have mercy. Like, I felt like I was having a heart attack when you said that. I'm like, oh my God. Did you know it was going to take 7 months?
Yeah. I told her it would be a year. So we were 5 months early.
Oh my God.
But it was 4 hours per week. So if you think about that, she did homework in between. Yeah. They worked on items in between the between each week, between each session. She was very faithful. Every session she was prepared. I think that's an ideal situation. I think other situations could be longer, could be less. It really depends on what it is that you're looking for. So yeah, while it seems like 7 months is a lot, it's so much off their plate and so much stress that we've reduced now that their son, when he comes in, if something were ever to happen, he could care for the very few things they have left. They're really living minimally, like you enjoy doing.
Yeah, and it is a final act of love, because why do you want to burden your kid with that? I'm in a similar situation. I'm a single parent. I only have one child, and I think the same way. Like, if something happens to me, I don't want to place that on him. And that is something that's part of what led to my minimalism lifestyle. And it's funny because a friend of his, he's 26, and his friend said, why do you want to live like that? Like, why do you want to walk around? I go to the store and I think to myself, do I really, really need that? And I really stress over it. And she's like, just buy it. Why do you want to live like that? And my response to her is, why do you want to live the way you live? Right. I like the way I live. I like the fact that I don't have all of this stuff. So you mentioned something when you were talking. You were talking about organizer, right? Versus what you do. What is the difference? And I think people need to understand that, whether they're going to hire an organizer or they're going to hire somebody like you to declutter. Talk about the differences between those two missions, so to speak.
Yeah. So I kind of look at it as kind of an umbrella, right? Okay. I'm associated with an organization called the National Association of the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals. So our goal is to be productive, right? Yes, I'm a professional organizer. Yes, I declutter. Yes, I can help you downsize. Yes, I can help you upsize. We're working with a client on Saturday, and it's an unpack job. They're moving from out of state into this state, and we're unpacking their items, but they're into a much bigger home than what they came from. So it's really my goal is to cater whatever the need is to the client. So I think when we say decluttering or we say organizing, it kind of encompasses all those things. It's like under the same umbrella. The goal is to really give you back your time. That is my end goal. I don't want you spending time doing things that you don't want to do. So we want to develop good systems, right? So something specific that I'll say is I talk about prime real estate, right? So the olive oil that you use on a daily basis, do you put that in a cupboard behind 3 other oils? No, you put it in your prime real estate, right? Where you can grab on a turntable right next to the stove or just above your head. That's the kind of things that we work through. We work through like daily living, and we want to really customize it so that the customer and the client can really spend time doing what they enjoy doing rather than what they feel like they have to do, decluttering.
I think a lot of adult children are struggling with dealing with elderly parents who either have to downsize or maybe they're leaving their home to go into assisted living or independent living. And I think it's a problem. So give us some advice on how an adult child like myself can convince their elderly parent, like my 88-year-old mother, how do you get rid of stuff? Because to her, it's a prized possession. Through the years, I've helped her downsize and I've helped her get rid of stuff. But she has China from 50 or 60 years ago. And she's like, no, I want to save that and give it to your son. My son doesn't want that stuff.
He really doesn't.
Or that silver tea set, when back in the day and we had, the dowry or whatever for your wedding and you got that silver tea set. How do you convince an elderly parent that, we don't want this stuff? And how do you convince them to let go of it? Because what I hear from her all the time is, hey, this is worth a lot of money. No, it's not. Nobody wants it.
I know.
Help me, Carolina.
Yes. So the first thing, if they think that it's worth a lot of money, we do research. I actually will do research and prove their theory, usually wrong. And I feel terrible. I feel terrible that I'm the bearer of bad news. Yeah. But we do research. I also do something in our business. It's called collectibles advising. I'm associated with an organization called the Keys Guild. And what we do is we work with partners all over the country. So we have a coin person that's a professional in the middle of the country, in the Midwest, that we send our coins to that we think have value. And we talk a lot about it. We have someone that is in New York at an auction house that does Chinese art, right? So we work with all different places all over the country to see if these items do have some value. And we do quite a bit of research. You can do research too. Something that we've talked about is people will do research on eBay and they say, look, that's selling for $1,000. But is it sold or is it selling, right? So you got to search the sold listings as opposed to the people that are selling things, because it's only worth what people are willing to pay for it. So that's probably the first thing. If someone says there's any value, well, let's do some research. Let's go through this together. And a lot of times, because I give that tough news, sometimes that starts to break them down a little bit. Like, okay, maybe it is time to let it go. And I think something that the gentle art of Swedish death cleaning talks about is being considerate of your family members. I really try to drive that home with family members. I try to be the bad guy so that the family doesn't feel like the bad guy, right? So I'll say, blame me. Let me take the heat for it. And I'll say to them the tough things that family has a hard time saying. Like, you need to do this for your family because you love them. Do you really want to leave them with thousands of dollars of items and thousands of dollars of cost to them because you decided to not clean it up before you passed away or before you needed to move into assisted living? So, I don't want people to feel guilty. I want people to feel encouraged. I want them to recognize it themselves. And I think, Flora, when people can recognize it themselves, I think they can really move forward and do it. Your 88-year-old mom, sometimes it's hard because they grew up in a different time. People were reusing plastic, reusing foil, and we're not in those times right now, thankfully, right? We should be really thankful for that. But I think we have to consider that too. Think of their side of it. Like, Mom, you don't really have to do that kind of stuff anymore, and we're thankful that we can do that. How do I help you? How do I love on you? How do I encourage you? Because I think it's important for us to work through this process together. And I think not condemning them, because I think, it's so easy to make people feel bad. I think it's harder to encourage. I think don't go that route. Don't make them feel guilty. Encourage them through the process. And usually you can find a lot of success that way.
Well, I think that's great that you offer that service, that you actually look it up and provide them with the information to say, yeah, it is worth something, or no, not so much.
Right.
That's really great. And I like hearing that you're the bad guy, because I go home, I go back to visit my mom, and every time I do, I'm like, okay, let's get rid of stuff. Let's get rid of stuff. To the point that she said to my brother, your sister comes in here and she throws all of my stuff out. I don't have any clothes left. She wants me to walk around naked.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
I'm the bad guy. But I'm like, Mom, you have 15 pairs of black pants.
Yeah.
How many pairs of black pants do you need?
Yeah.
So it is, I like that. I wish I had you there to be the bad guy. So, and then once you get in there and you have dispelled that and said, this is worth something, and so we're going to try to get you money, or this isn't.
Sure.
What about other stuff? How do you convince an elderly person to get rid of, like my mother has 15 pairs of black pants. How do you convince her to let go? Let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. I think what you said, Flora, it's really smart to actually put this stuff together. I was working with a client in Annville, and she has a gorgeous home, right? A gorgeous walk-in closet. And we started to organize her items. And when we started to organize like some shirts and pants and tops and stuff by color, she's like, how comes I have 4 of the same shirt? So I think, when you put all that together, kind of like what you were saying with your mom, you put, the 10, 15 pairs of pants together, you can say to her, Mom, okay, which one is the most comfortable?
Yeah.
Which one do you feel the best in? Because you don't need 15. Okay, I mean, let's do 3, 4, Mom, maybe. And really figure out, she'll start to say, oh, well, those feel funny here, or those have a pull here, or that. Work through it individually. It does take time. And I think that's what we're struggling with, right? No one has time for anything because we're running around like crazy all the time. I know I have 3 kids. One's in college, one's in high school, and one's about to enter high school. Next year, I'm going to have 2 seniors. It's going to be full, but you still need to take the time to do those things, make those decisions and declutter. If I'm bringing new towels in, I got to let go of some towels,
That's what I do. And boy, I wish I could have had, I needed you when I was going through her black pants, because I should have said that. Which ones do you really wear? Which ones do you like? Because she does that with her slippers. I think she has 90 pairs of slippers.
Oh my goodness.
And she'll go, oh, these hurt. Oh, this one I can't walk in. Oh, these.
Right.
So she does, and then I go, get rid of them. If they hurt, get rid of them. And she's like, no. So it is a process. But it isn't just, in my head, it isn't just like a physical thing that I don't want all of this stuff. For me, it's mental as well. It's emotional. Like when I walk in to somebody else's messy house, I can't breathe. I'm just like, I can't breathe. Like if there's so much clutter. And I don't think people understand that. Especially when you hear this, where are my keys? What I do with this? Where's my wallet? Well, if you cleared all that stuff out and you had a space for it, wouldn't your life be easier?
Yeah.
It's easier. Talk to us about the emotional and the mental aspects of getting rid of all of this stuff.
Yeah. I think people think it's hard when they go to do it. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client, and we were working through her paperwork, and it was years of paperwork. She was young, though. She was in her mid-30s, but she was also dealing with parents and grandparents' paperwork, right? And she thought, it's going to take forever. And I said to her, okay, let's lay out all the categories, and let's file the stack that we have here. We went and started filing that stack. I purposely timed it. I set a timer. I said, how long do you think it's going to take? And she said, I think it's going to take an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. It was 11 minutes and 46 seconds. So when I gave her some perspective on how much time it actually takes, I think she was like, I can do this. This is not bad. I can take 15 minutes out of my week and file sheets and papers from one week. And it'll probably take less time because that was a couple years that we filed, right? We had already made the filing system, right? We're talking about that. That was already developed. We were just putting those away. And I was saying to her, we had already developed the system, and I had come back to her a different week. And I said to me, I'm not beating you up, but just talk to me about why you didn't think this happened. Like, why couldn't you accomplish this? And that was her concern, is how much time it takes. So I think, when I think about the mental and the aspect of people feeling like I can't do this because I don't have time, you can't afford to not do it, right? It's
agree.
really important when you think about going to study. When you have a child is looking to study, do you have a space that's full and cluttered with a ton of books? No, you want your child to be able to focus, right? So you want to make sure that that space is clear, so that their mind is clear, so that they can focus on what it is that they're trying to do. I think it's essential for our mental health to declutter. And I think the more frequently we do it, the better for our mental health. So I think it's a really important component to us being healthy mentally.
So let me tell you what I do, and you can come right out and tell me if I'm a wacko, because I'm okay with that.
I won't say you're a wacko, but okay.
You can call me a nutbag. You can call me anything you want.
Okay.
But I mean, first of all, I have adopted this minimalist lifestyle. And second of all, every 6 months, I go through every square inch of my home. And even though I am a minimalist, I still find stuff every 6 months to get rid of. And I look at this and I'm like, I haven't worn that in 5 years. I'm not going to wear it again. And I continue every 6 months to do this. And I did this with my son too, when he was growing up.
Yeah.
Every 6 months, I'm like, get upstairs. We're going through your clothes closet. Okay, let's go through this. You outgrew this. This has a hole in it. You don't wear this anymore. Am I nuts to do this every 6 months?
No, I don't think so. I think if you have the ability to do it every 6 months, you should. I think whatever the person decides, they need to stick to. Just be committed to that, right? If you say 6 months, Flora, do 6 months. If you say 1 year, do 1 year. If you say every 2 years, then do every 2 years. I think whatever it is, just be consistent. And I think the fact that you're being consistent is what's making you successsul in that area.
And you know what? It doesn't take that much time. Once you do that initial haul, and I do like that little tactic there. You timed it. She's like, oh, it's going to take 3 years. And it ended up taking, as you said, like a matter of minutes. I like that tactic. And as you continue, it does. It takes less and less time to go through things.
Absolutely.
We've talked about physical stuff. Okay, there's another component to this as well. In this digital technological world that we're living in, there's digital clutter that I think we need to clear away the digital clutter as well. Let's talk about that. And how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. So yes, there's so much digital clutter. Now that we have cell phones, old cell phones, pictures, tablets, iPads. Yes, there's a lot of digital clutter. And it's so easy to ignore, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't physically touch it. You just see it, right? So I think one of the key things I think to trying to deal with digital clutter is daily dealing with your spam email, or weekly. Like if daily's tough for you, then weekly. Something that you can commit to and stay regular to. Kind of like we were talking about with you. You're going through your house every 6 months. Yeah. Something that you know that you can commit to every week. Like Sunday night, you're going through your emails and you're getting rid of all your spam, or you're getting rid of all the junk mail. You can also go into those mails and unsubscribe. So that's something that is a component of digital clutter if we're talking about email that you can let go of as well. I think, when you think about digital clutter, like a laptop, the front of your laptop and all the icons that are up, that's an easy clean off, but it takes time. So I think something that you feel like you can commit to on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, I wouldn't go past really that, I wouldn't go up to a month, because then it's an overwhelming task. And then it does take the time that you're looking to not take on it. But like text messages, I actually go through my text messages probably every 3 3 days and delete all the ones that I know I don't need, or that conversation doesn't, I don't need to keep it for future. And to keep up with it. I think that that's the key, is keeping up with the digital, the digital emails, or I'm sorry, the emails that is digital, the emails, the text messages, the photos, right? Have you taken photos that day or that week? Do you need to go in and delete all the duplicates and just keep one or two of that graduation picture that you took?
Yes.
So I think it's really just trying to be consistent, similar to your home, but doing it digitally, finding a time, assigning yourself a time, like an office time that you can take each week. I do that for my clients all the time. I'll say to put it in your calendar, actually give yourself that time, give yourself an hour, to be able to take care of some of those things, pay your household bills, whether it's, that or dealing with some of your digital clutter.
Yeah, it gives me anxiety. When I log into my email and I see there's 50 emails, it gives me anxiety. And I'm like, I need to get rid of this stuff because I can't breathe. And I think that all of that noise is really making us crazy as well. It's
Absolutely.
not just the physical stuff, but it's
Absolutely.
the digital as well. So as we wrap up this podcast, give us some final thoughts.
Well, I think start small. Don't empty your entire bedroom closet onto your bed. You can't sleep there that night, right? Start small. Start small. Start with a linen closet. Start with a junk drawer. Start with one kitchen drawer. Just start small. I would say number 2 is you really don't beat yourself up. I feel like we're so good at beating ourselves up about everything, right? It doesn't matter what it is, right? I don't have enough time for this. I can't do that. I can't read. I don't have time to post. I don't have time to be a good mom. I don't have time to be a great professional.
Stop.
I know. Don't beat yourself up. Give yourself some grace. It's really important for us to love on ourselves. I think that's really important for our mental health, right? Yeah. And number 3, I would say ask for help. I'm not saying ask for a professional, right? If you need a professional, hire Cure the Clutter, hire a professional organizer or a decluttering company. But I would say ask for help. Family is willing to help you. You just have to be able to reach out and ask for it. I have had kids say to me, my child will make a statement and I'm like, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Because I want you to actually ask me if you're looking for me to give you guidance or to help you with that resume or to help you with that email. Just reach out and ask for help.
Yeah. And I think once you do it, and once you get through the process, you're just going to feel like 50 pounds lighter.
Yes.
You're just going to, all this, it just goes away. It really is a freeing experience. Well, speaking of help, if people need your help, how can they get in touch with you?
So you can find, I have a website. It's curetheclutter.net, or you can find me on all the socials. Cure the Clutter, except Instagram. It's at @cure_the_clutter. But if you just Google Cure the Clutter, you'll find us.
We'll be able to find you. Carolina,
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Lots of fun and so much great advice that I think you're going to help a lot of people. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a blast, Flora.
All right, thanks. And thank you for tuning in and listening to this podcast. Remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Chick2Chick USA, and we will be back soon with a new podcast episode.